Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Alexis Anderson. I'm the Scholarships Administrator here at the National Society of High School Scholars. We're going to get started in just a couple minutes. I'm going to give everyone a few minutes to join, and then we will be on our way. Alrighty. Thank you so much for joining this evening. This is our Scholarship Savvy Winning Scholarship Strategies webinar. Our agenda for this evening, we're going to kick it off with some introductions to our lovely panelists. We have 3 student panelists, scholarship winners, joining us this evening. We're going to hear some advice for them, some tips and tricks. As an application reviewer, I'm going to go over some common mistakes, some things to do, some things not to do in your application. And then we'll jump straight into a Q&A from the audience. And towards the end, I'm just going to touch base and give some information about the Be More grant that's closing on September 5th. So let's go ahead and get started. Our first panelist is Kendra Nayaka. She is a scholarship winner of the National Society of High School Scholars Innovation and Technology Scholarship 2024. Kendra is a high school student and aspiring engineer. Alongside her active involvement in FIRST and VEX robotics and teaching STEM to children, she developed a portable and individualized air quality monitor system for outdoors and wildfires, and she aims for accessibility and affordability of AQMs. This invention won 6 awards and a bronze medal in the Regional Science Fair, and she became the national winner in an Innovative Youth Challenge. A former competitive athlete, Kendra started tennis at the age of 7, competed nationally until 12, and then became a certified coach at 15, and actively built a tennis community. She works as a tennis coach and founded a free all-girls tennis program advocating for gender equity in the sport, which won a monetary award to further its impact. She is one of the youth councils and several organizations that advocate for gender equity in sports and youth safety on roads. In 2023, she became the youngest tournament director for an all-girls tournament. Thank you so much, Kendra, for joining us. She's a very accomplished young lady. We're lucky to hear from her. Next, we have Shreyan Signa. Shreyan is from Coral Springs, Florida, and he's a junior in high school who loves math and politics, traveling, and listening to reggaeton music. Shreyan is committed to mental health awareness and started an organization titled MeWe, which allows him to further this goal. Through MeWe, he hosts an open forum online where youth mental illness survivors from states such as Texas, New Jersey, and Hawaii share their firsthand accounts, stories, and commentaries to dispel mental health myths. He's a professional Formula One commentator from the couch. On weekends, you can find him in the kitchen experimenting with flavors and creating fusion dishes. He wants to pursue public policy in college. Shreyan was the winner of the NSHSS Mental Health Awareness Scholarship this past year, 2024. Thank you so much, Shreyan, for joining us. And lastly, we have Addison Duke. Addison is an NSHSS ambassador and a winner of 2 scholarships during her time as an NSHSS member. She won the 18 Under 18 award in 2024, as well as the Your First Scholarship award in 2023. She is also a rising high school senior, has been on the varsity swim team since she was a freshman, works as a swim coach for her city swim team, and is the president of her school's Key Club. In her free time, she donates handmade animal plushies to the children's hospitals and packs food for children in need around the world. Thank you so much, all of our panelists, for joining us today. I know everyone's excited to hear your insights, and we can jump straight into some questions. So the first thing I have for you all, these are some common questions that I get as a scholarship reviewer. How did you make your application stand out? What is something you would suggest to somebody starting an application for the first time to really showcase their abilities and just give a good quality application? Kendra, do you want to start?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. And to answer the first question, I think the best way to kind of make your application stand out is kind of by telling a story, because I know all of you here are really good students. You guys all have probably amazing marks. And if you want to make it stand out, kind of tell a story in your application, because don't say, don't open your application with, I deserve this scholarship because I'm a straight A student. They're gonna probably fly past that. They're not gonna look at it because a lot of other students say the exact same thing. Probably kind of think of a novel or a movie you watch and see how that novel or movie kind of catches your attention, and kind of start with a bang. Start with like a really interesting first sentence, because then the application, like people who read your applications are going to be hooked in your story, and then they get to know you more outside of the grades, outside of you as a student. So that kind of helps you stand out a bit more. And that's what I did in my application. I didn't mention anything about my grades or me being an amazing student, because I bet all of you are. I talk more outside of that, so they get to know me more as a well-rounded student. So yeah, that's about it.
That is a perfect answer, Kendra.
Thank
I would
you.
agree that we are lucky at the National Society of High School Scholars that all of our students are extraordinary. We wouldn't be here if we weren't. So the best thing to say in your essay is to talk about yourself more than I have a 4.0 and I got an A in this class and an A in this class, because we can see that in other places in your application, right? The essay is the place to tell us other things about you that we wouldn't be able to see just from your transcript. So that was a great answer, Kendra. Shreyan, do you want to give it your 2 cents?
Sure. So I completely agree with the whole story thing. I think like also another major tip that I would give is try to make it memorable, try to make it stick out. So a lot of people like, especially in your essays, try to have a little like fun with it, because the people who are like reviewing your essays, they're reviewing like sometimes over 1,000 all the time, and so they're gonna get bored of like seeing the same style of responses. So if you give like a little like quirky one, or maybe like you start off with a sentence that's like eye catching, like a hook, and it gets them interested, I think that's in your benefit definitely, because then they're more like interested and they're more likely to read your entire application and consider you as a good kind of person to get that scholarship. So my 2 cents would be trying to make it memorable as much as possible. What I try to do is like kind of make it funny. Use your strengths definitely to your advantage. If you're funny, try to put some humor into it. And I think another part of the application is like don't tell, do more showing. So try to use like more like imagery and like description. Like instead of saying like I am funny, use like humor to show that you are funny. So that's my 2 cents.
That's also a great answer. You're right. For each individual application, reviewers will read anywhere from 150 to 1,000 applications. So anything that you can do to really make yourself stand out and make the person reading it remember your name and your story and the picture you submit all together, that's the best thing you can do. So that's a great answer too, Shreyan. Addison, do you want to tell us what you think?
Yes. So I think the most important thing when you are writing these scholarships is to talk about yourself. I know some of the prompts are going to be very different, but you may be talking about someone who's inspired you, but you can't make it about them because the scholarship is supposed to be about you. So when I was writing my 2 scholarships, the ones that I won, I was mainly highlighting the things that about me that I thought I stood out from other people. So like combinations of leadership, community service, and just things that I was passionate about, such as like my role as a swim coach, advocating for children and cancer patients. But overall, I think it needs to be more about you than anything else. And you can mention that you were inspired by your mother or your father, your grandfather, but in the end, it needs to be all about you.
That is also very true. We want to hear your personal story, your narrative, how you connect to the prompt, all of those things. Those are all great answers. Okay, the next thing I have is a lot of students are confused during the application process about their resumes. A lot of these students are high school students, so they don't necessarily have a lot of work experience, which is fine and totally normal, but it raises a lot of questions of like, what is an appropriate thing to put on your resume as a high school student? So could you all share some things you include on your resume, maybe some tips and tricks of how you worded things and the way you arranged them, anything like that? Shreyan, do you want to start with this one?
Sure. So in my resume, like I understand that as high schoolers, like sometimes like we're so burdened with school, we don't have work experience. But work experience, it can even be like an internship that you had. Maybe it was like 1 week, 2 weeks. It still shows like you working in more of a professional setting. I personally, the way I organized my resume was that I wanted to show I kind of think of like what kind of story or what kind of person I want to present myself as. And so I think like, especially since we're all in this organization and we're like, we all have leadership like characteristics, try to present yourself as a leader. So literally like the first section that I have is like all about my schoolwork. So it's just like my GPA, it's like what courses I've taken, maybe some SAT score. And then right after that, I have leadership experience. So it's like whether it's part of a school club or it's like some nonprofit that you own or something that you're involved outside of school, try to like present yourself as a leader, someone who's showing that you're willing to go out of the way to do stuff and you love giving back to the community. I think that's a profile that is absolutely compelling. And another thing that I would kind of highlight in the resume, actually two things would be one, try to, since you're trying to show yourself as a leader, try to say like, instead of saying like, oh, I helped to do this, you can say like, I did this. So use like more of those like command and charge words that show that you're actually like doing the action rather than you're just passively doing it and you're like taking control of it. And the last thing would be what would be again try to like keep it short and brief. Don't have long descriptions because once again, a lot of these applications, there are a lot of them, and then the applicant reviewers, they're gonna have like time or like actually no time at all to like review all of them. So they're gonna go very briefly. So try to make them like again, if you could like fun, quirky, like eye catching, and to the point.
That's very true. And a resume is typically supposed to be one page. Um, just really the highlights. It's kind of like it's your highlight reel in a way. Like you don't need to include every single thing you've ever done on it. You know, if you were a babysitter for 2 weeks, but then you had this internship, like that obviously takes precedence. So I think prioritizing the things that you're doing and how they relate to where you want to go is also a really good approach for a resume for a high school student. All right, Addison, do you have any ideas?
Yes, so the way I have my resume formatted, it's split up to 4 different sections. My first one is education. So, like I said, it has my GPA, the officer positions I have in school. For NSHSS, I have that I'm an ambassador and recipient of 2 scholarships. And then the one after that is work experience. Now, I know the most people here may not even be working yet, but I have been working for a while, so I have included that. I've included that I've been a water safety instructor, a coach, and a babysitter. And then right below that, I have my certifications, which match up with my work experience. And then my last one is community service. But like Miss Alexis said, it should be around one page. So even if you have about like 50 different volunteer opportunities, put the ones that you are most passionate about and that you have stuck with the longest time. Because for me, I feel like if I had 2 opportunities that I had around 100 hours in versus 20 opportunities that I only had an hour in, I feel like the two that I had the most hours in would stand out, as it would say that I was dedicated and I stuck through with it rather than hopping on to different service opportunities.
Yes, that is also a perfect answer. For high school students that maybe don't have all of the extracurriculars that some do, because you know some people they don't have access to the same kinds of opportunities. Maybe they did have to work in high school, so they didn't get to participate in all of these clubs. That's still valid, and you should still put that on your resume and talk about those experiences as well, because even if you're working, you know, as a host at a restaurant and you're not doing an internship, that's still a valuable experience. You're learning from it, your work ethic, all of those kinds of things. So I think the main thing you should focus on with your resume is just phrasing, kind of like what Shreyan touched on. Like you want to frame the activity that you're doing so that it lends itself to how you want to take that experience and run with it for the rest of your academic career and your career. All right, Kendra, do you have any ideas?
I think you guys already touched on a lot of things, but definitely I agree with both of them. In terms of Sharon, I agree to like just make a more active writing. Also, it helps you with being concise and also make space for other things. Because like Alexa said, it's a one-page resume. You don't have a lot of space, so you have to prioritize what you want to put and the description of each one. So you have to really pack it into one thing. And also, I also did what Addison did, where I divided it into academics, community involvement. I also made a resume that didn't have work experience, so I didn't have that at that point. So I did academics, community involvement. This was in grade 9. School involvement, so everything from also like sports and sports teams and art that also helps with what you're interested in and how dedicated you are in certain things. And I also put skills because I've been STEM, so I put skills like um Autodesk, like CAD design and things like that. That helps too, especially if, well, at that point I didn't have work experience, so it was not as full as it is now. So things like that helps with kind of what you want to get into. And maybe also sometimes re like I kind of rewrite my resumes to fit what this job wants. So it's more of a like a STEM job, then maybe I put more STEM related things. If it's tennis coaching, then I put more tennis related involvements in my resume. So also cater it towards what your job is. But yes, so far I agree with all of you guys. And yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Right. That is a great point, Kendra. Resumes and applications in general are not always one size fits all. So if you're condensing your experience down to one page and some of your experience lends itself more to the opportunity that you're applying for, then that's what you should highlight in your application. Like if you've done a lot of STEM related extracurricular activities and you're applying for a STEM scholarship, those are the things you'll want to include. If you've done, a lot of art related things, art galleries and whatnot, and that's the scholarship you're applying for, you have to find a way to like prioritize what's on your resume since you are limited on space to what you're applying for. So great answers, everyone. All right, the next one that I have is, what has your overall strategy been for applying for scholarships? Addison, do you want to start?
Sure. So, like Kendra said in the very beginning, whenever I apply for the scholarships, there's always a written part, and I try and do that one first. So I am not waiting to the very last minute, and that's the very last thing I have to do. But when writing it, like Kendra said, I try and make it like a story, so it's very compelling for people to read. And if you guys have ever applied to a scholarship before, you know that there's always like different sections that it requires. Like I know there's the resume part, there's pictures of service opportunity that you can have, and the recommendations. My advice for the recommendations is that should be the very first thing you do, even before you start writing, because you need to give the people who you are getting the recommendations a heads up because it takes time and effort to write those recommendations. But overall, I just want to make sure that each part of the application is done way before the actual due date is, so you're not stressing about it and then you submit a sloppy application. And just making sure that it's really organized and that the essay is tailored to you and you're talking about yourself and not anyone else. And I had a checkline or a timeline and a checklist of everything. So that really helped me stay organized. That's another thing, is to stay very organized. That has been my strategy when applying for the scholarships.
That is so important. Staying organized is key, especially we see a lot with these scholarships that a lot of students will apply for 10, 15 scholarships at a time, which is great. But a lot of the time they have different deadlines, they need to get recommendations, all of those kinds of things. So staying organized is definitely key. Shreyan, do you want to tackle this one?
Sure. So I'd say like I definitely also agree with like the time management covering, but I also want to like emphasize it or maybe like revising and reviewing your application, like making sure like when you do that timeline you have enough time for that. Because to be honest, so sometimes when you apply to a lot of scholarships, you'll notice that some of the essays are similar. So sometimes you like copy paste them, but you want to make sure that they're also tailored to them and you don't have like, oh, like a word that's from like a different scholarship. So you want to like really make sure that your responses look like you're only applying to that scholarship and no other scholarship to show like your main interest is that scholarship itself. So that, and also like a lot of times when I've like reviewed, I've seen like a lot of like grammatical errors that have come up. So I think just like also like making sure like in your timeline, keeping some time set aside to like review it and not just like do it like 2 hours before. I know we're all used to like the 11:59 kind of deadline, but especially when you can make like some bank and like it helps you with college, I think it's like it's definitely worth it to make sure that you review it.
Excuse me. We can always tell when a application was done at the last minute. A rushed application is never a good application. So taking the time to really prioritize the application. It's like Shreyan said, it's totally okay to be applying for multiple scholarships and kind of have a skeleton of an essay that you use, but it is important to you reuse them, you don't recycle them, if that makes sense. So you're reimagining them for every application that you're doing, but it is important to that every scholarship application has unique prompts and unique qualifications. So it is important to take the time to edit carefully and making sure that what you're submitting reflects what's being asked. All right, Kendra?
For sure. Definitely start as early as you can. It's never good to start as late, but I think also I agree with Addison in terms of like reminding your referees and references early. I sometimes give them about 2 to 3 weeks ahead of the deadline of references because sometimes reference and application deadlines are also different. I give them about 2 to 3 weeks so that they don't rush it as well. And they're also more inclined to ask to be referenced again in the future because it's always good to keep that good relationship. But also, of course, I think to just, oh, this is what I did too. I had a friend of a parent of mine read my essay, and I have never met this person. Person has never met me, and they don't know much about me. So by reading my essay of someone she doesn't really know, I get to see what kind of person I come across just through my writing. And that helps me to see if that's why I want the scholarship application committee to see me. And if it doesn't really meet their mission, like their vision of the scholarship, because every scholarship is also different, then I also revise it. That's why you need time to revise it, just like Shreyan said. That's kind of how I revise my essays to make it tailored to the scholarship. And it really helped so far. And lastly, to just apply, honestly. You never know your chances. Apply as many as you can, and see how it goes because you never really know. But yeah.
That is so true. There's so many opportunities out there and you won't get any of the scholarships you don't apply for. So might as well throw all your nets out there and see what you can catch, right? All right. Thank you guys so much. We're gonna move on to some tips and tricks for me of things that I see frequently on applications, some things to avoid. So the first thing on my list of do's and don'ts, the first do, and our panelists touched on these because they're awesome. I would say one of the most important things for a scholarship application is to show your personality. Your application shouldn't just be a list of all of your achievements, right? It's an opportunity for you to introduce yourself to the person that's reading your application. So make it memorable, make it personable, share some experiences, some highlights of what shaped you as a person, as a student, what's important to you. The more that we know about you personally and the less that it reads as just a regurgitation of your resume, the better. That will help us connect with you on a personal level and that will make you more memorable, which is always the goal. Kind of in the same realm, demonstrate a passion for the topic. We love awarding scholarships to people that are obviously very passionate and go out of their way to make a change or become a leader in the field that they're applying for. So whether that's art, STEM, communications, we have scholarships for fields all across the board. Use your essay to convey why this topic is important to you. This is a good place for you to tie in some of your experiences and being like, I'm really interested in STEM. So I've dedicated all of my afternoons for the past year tutoring elementary school students in STEM, and it has you know, built my passion for the topic, things like that. Like we want to see that you're willing to take the time to learn more and to grow as a scholar in your field. The next important part, which also was touched on, I believe, what is to build a narrative. Your application should read almost like a story. So you're using all of the different components, your essay, your resume, your transcript, all of those things are pieces that create a big picture of who you are. And as the reviewer, we're looking at all of those pieces to figure out who you are as a person. So all of them should be cohesive. So, you know, your essay will talk about why you love STEM, all of the things that inspire you about the STEM field, this, that, and the other. And then on your resume, we're seeing all of the things that you're doing to back that up. So you're really painting a picture of your personality, your academic achievements, your recommendations play a part into that too. So really, really pay attention to each individual piece of your application because they do matter and they will help with the overall impression that you're leaving on your reviewer. The last do that I have is double check your grammar and mechanics. Spelling and grammar matter, attention to detail matter. Every reviewer notices when it is sloppy and last minute and when you didn't proofread or, you know, there's obvious grammar mistakes, spelling mistakes, things of that nature. Just spend the time on your application that you would want the person reviewing it to spend the time reviewing it. Give it care, give it attention because you are looking for money and, you know, that takes effort. And we want to see that that effort comes through, that you cared enough to be proactive and to check all of those things. Something that I did when I was in school and something that I still do now in my career is to read your essay in your head to yourself 3 times and then read it out loud 3 times and then have somebody else read it in their head and then have somebody else read it out loud. That's a really good way to check for those mistakes that you don't see at first glance. You can also use services like Grammarly is good for things like that. The more times that you read it and the more eyes that you have on it, the better off you are. So time and attention is important for those things. A major don't that I have, which I briefly touched on, but I'll elaborate, is don't repeat your resume in your essay. It's totally normal to use your essay to elaborate on the things that are in your resume. But what we don't want to see is, I did this in high school. Was in this club, I had this GPA. Like we're going to see that in your resume already. The essay serves a different purpose. Really, we want to see, what did you gain from those experiences that are on your resume? What did you learn? How are you going to use those experiences in the future? What are you hoping to develop from those experiences? You need to contextualize what's in your resume, in your essay, not just give us a bullet list of everything you've accomplished. It's impressive, but we're going to see it in other places. So make sure you don't use your essay for that purpose. Also, don't procrastinate. Scholarship applications take time, they take consideration. Addison touched on this. It's really important to give your recommenders plenty of time to write the recommendations. Recommendations take a long time. You want them to be well thought out. You don't want them to be last minute. Sometimes teachers have technological issues submitting their recommendations and they need tech support. That takes time. Things like that. As much advance notice as you can give someone as possible, the better. Also, a rushed application, like I said, it's always evident. All of these components need care and attention. And if you're procrastinating until the last minute, something is going to get left behind. And that's the last thing that you want. The last thing might seem kind of obvious, but I'm going to say anyway, don't ignore the application instructions. What I mean by that is if an essay prompt asks for 500 to 800 words and you write 200 or you write 1500, neither of those are good things. The instructions are there for a reason. They're there to help with the process of review. They're there so that we can really see who you are as a student. A longer essay is not always a better essay. Sometimes it's actually the opposite. So read the instructions carefully, submit what's being asked, and if you have questions, you can always reach out to us. You can always email me directly, and we'll try to answer those the best that we can. But like I said before, if you procrastinate reading those instructions and I get an email at 11:58 the night that the scholarship is due, there's not a ton that I can do for you. So be thorough, read the instructions ahead of time, make a plan. That's the best strategy to staying on top of all of these things, and then you should be successful. So that's awesome. All right. So I think now we were going to move on to some Q&A from the audience. I have one right here for Shreyan. They said, can you give an example of how you were fun in your scholarship application? What do you think?
Sure. So trying to think of an example. So if you kind of saw in like the description that I kind of like wrote for this one, saying like I'm a professional like F1 commentator like from the couch. So it kind of like contradicts. But I'm trying to think of like a specific example in which I was like more fun. Um, One of my essays I started off with, so I have a local community park. It's called Betty Stradling. So I started off with, I'm Betty Stradling Park's #1 fan. And that essay was actually about advocacy and then me trying to like deal with change. So I could have like used any other example through which like I kind of like wanted to talk about change, but I specifically chose that park because and this is true, I kind of like carved on one of the slides that said Shreyan loves Betty. And so like I try to think of like fun experiences and trying to like tie them in and then trying to like think of like a narrative or some kind of lesson that I want to revolve around it and just like pick up like little tiny details that could possibly be funny and then just like kind of like shape my essay. But yeah, like try to do that. Maybe sometimes it could like this could work, sometimes this also couldn't. Like try putting in a pun, maybe like some kind of corny joke. Sometimes not really corny jokes, they don't really hit, but yeah. Hope that's like
That makes sense. Just show your personality. Be professional, but show your personality. We want to see who you are as a person. I have another one that says, where do you find scholarships that fit your skills and interests? Kendra, do you want to touch on that? How you found the scholarship that fits your niche and what you're interested in?
I think, well, one, to find out what I actually like, the resume, by making a resume that actually helped me with what I like and what kind of skills I have. So then I also know what types. That's why, because I'm into STEM, I applied to STEM scholarships, but also sport ones because of tennis. So, and then other things, but those two are mostly the ones. And then like, well, NSHSS has so many types of scholarships, so I also went there. Funnily enough, I applied to so many in 1 year. I found that you can only do one. But I also applied to so many outside of NSHSS as well because you want to apply as many as you can, and you kind of honestly, I just type like STEM scholarships, like for high school students, for university students, and a lot of websites come up. That's how I also found NSHSS, honestly. So kind of doing in-depth research helps, and definitely find out maybe like 3 types of scholarships that you want to types like STEM, sport, maybe art, or whatever else, community involvement, and then go from there, because that helps it easier by narrowing down what scholarships you can and can't apply to, depending on your experience and your skills. I don't know if that answered the question, but hopefully it did.
I think it did. Like Kendra said, I think the first part to figuring out what scholarships to apply for is to figure out what you're interested in. What do you just kind of evaluate? What do you already like to do? What are some classes that you enjoy? What are some extracurriculars that you would want to do if you haven't been doing them? Like where do your interests lie? And then you can narrow it down from there. NSHSS has a ton of scholarships across all different fields. So I recommend just going through them and reading the prompts and reading the directions and just seeing what sparks your interest. And usually that's a good guiding factor. And if you ever have questions about what qualifies for a scholarship or things like that, you can also always reach out to us if you want to know, hey, this is what I'm interested in. What do you guys have? We can answer those kinds of questions as well. Shreyan, do you have any answer for that?
um can you quickly repeat it? I didn't catch the last part.
It was how do you find scholarships that fit your area of interest? Like how do you know which scholarships to apply to?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I think that number one, this organization itself, you guys are already members of it, so you can like literally look, search it up, see what interests you, and see what specifically in your profile that you have. I think as Kendra mentioned, like your resume, um, like what specifically is your highlight, what is your special interest, and see whether you think you would be a strong applicant for that scholarship. Also online, I think you can just search up like what you're specifically interested in and then just search up scholarship. So for example, when I applied for my scholarship, the one that I won, the mental health scholarship, I myself is I'm a mental health advocate. I have like my own organization, and so many of the things that when I was like searching up online for a scholarship, I was actually looking for like money to kind of expand my organization. And so I just searched up like mental health initiative scholarship or mental health scholarship. And then a bunch of results showed up and you'll see online. And there are also other organizations and other like websites as well that help out. Like there's scholarships.com, FastWeb. But I think like NSHSS does really well in helping you find specific niche scholarships, and since you already show like, and the advantage of being a member in this organization is that you already like, they already know your caliber because you're already a member of this organization. And so they already have some kind of idea of what kind of student you are. So I think just looking online, again, looking for your interests, what specifically aligns with them, and using this organization to your advantage will help you out.
That is very true, Shreyan. Thank you so much. Addison?
So, like Kendra touched on, I would apply for scholarships that you have passion in. Like for me personally, I don't exactly have a passion in technology, so I wouldn't apply for a scholarship in technology. I would apply for scholarships that suit my strong suits and are about things that I'm passionate about. So I know the two scholarships I won, they were both about leadership, and I think I have good leadership qualities. I'm the president of our Key Club organization at school, which finds service opportunities for our members. And I do lots of leadership stuff like packing meals for Feed My Starving Children. I crochet hats, beanies, and little stuffed animals for the children at the hospital. And I also am very interested in going to the medical field. And I know, and to go to the medical field, you need a lot of leadership responsibilities. And over the past year and a half, I've shadowed about 14 different doctors, and each of them have taught me different leadership skills. And so when applying for scholarships, I also touch base on the leadership skills I have learned from them. But honestly, just applying to scholarships that you have a passion about. If you don't have a passion about whatever the scholarship is about, I would not recommend applying for it because you could spend that time applying for a different scholarship that you could most more likely win because you have a passion about it.
Yes, I think overall the answer is find your area of interest, really hone in on that, and use all the resources that you have at your disposal. A lot of the times, schools their counseling offices will have those kinds of resources for scholarships and stuff like that, like being able to find other ones even outside of NSHSS. So use all the resources at your disposal, do your research, and that's a pretty good place to start. All right, we have a question that says, what advice do you have for students who feel fear that they are too late in the game, juniors or seniors who feel like they might not have so much time to create their resumes? All right, Kendra, I'll let you start with that one since you're a graduating senior this year. What do you think?
Yes, because honestly, I I was kind of like that. I started applying scholarships a bit like I thought the same thing as everyone else. I started applying scholarships at grade 12 when other places like NSHSS can start at really young age. So I felt kind of I was late in the game, but honestly, um just after that in grade 12, I did as much as I can in school, outside of school. At that point I already got a job. So then I also in my resume I put everything from my job. And even in my application itself, like it doesn't have to be like this amazing, incredible story of what you did. Just even a small story like how maybe you helped um your neighbor like clean their lawn or something, but then you tell the story of how you build relationship with them. That tells this application, this scholarship, who you are as a person. Well, in that story itself, it can tell that you're really good at making connections with people. You like to help people, stuff like that. So even it can feel like you're late in the game, but honestly, what you think maybe is a boring story may not be to them. So just try and keep telling your story. Tell about yourself, because what you might not think is maybe interesting for them. And again, just apply, see how it goes. I applied to so many scholarships. I have my fair share of rejections as well as being accepted. And you just get used to it, and in the end, you do get you get some wins over some losses. So, just try. I guess like that's what I can say.
Yeah, that's great. I would say it's never too late to start. And like Kendra said, even if you're not able to maybe do these extra internships and you don't have the same density of experience on your resume as somebody who maybe started working on their resume and whatever, like their freshman year. I was not that way when I was 14 years old, so I commend those who are. But I would say use the experiences that you do have at your disposal. Join the clubs that you're able to, volunteer where you can. And the most important part, it's not necessarily the amount of things on your resume, but it's how you plan to utilize your experience to help you grow. So if you can demonstrate that and you can talk about, even if you were a dishwasher at a restaurant, that's a valuable experience. And there's a skill set that goes along with that too. So you should include all of those experiences on your resume. Anything and everything that you feel like contribute to your growth as a student and as an academic is valuable, and start where you can, and you'll be set. Tran, do you have anything to add to that?
Mm-hmm. No, I like resonate. I think that like if you're junior, senior, like still like don't worry, there's still a lot of scholarships available. And I think that all you have to do is just look for it sometimes. Like there's something hidden somewhere, but it's better to be like early in the game and start looking for scholarships as soon as possible. Like I think there's some scholarships that actually start in middle school. And so you can just like accumulate a bunch of money and just like it just helps. But don't worry too much. That don't worry too much over like yourself thinking that, oh, you're too late in the game, because there's always some kind of scholarship no matter what like grade.
That's so true. It's never too late to start. Addison, do you have anything to add?
Yes. So, like you just said, it's never too late to start. I have a friend of mine who already graduated high school, is now going to college. I had never even thought about applying to scholarships, but she's going to a very expensive school and she really wants the money. And she applied to a scholarship after she had graduated and she had gotten it. So, honestly, apply as soon as you can. It doesn't matter what age. If you feel like you are too old, don't. Even if you already graduated, there's still a chance that you could still get the scholarships. I know some NHSS scholarships are catered for some of the older students who are seniors or have already graduated. So look for scholarships that are suitable for you.
Yes, that's true. We have scholarships from freshman year all the way up to senior year of high school, and even some that are open to students in graduate school. So you're never too late there's always an opportunity out there. Um, Addison, I'm gonna point this one to you. It's how do I show leadership skills without sounding like I'm exaggerating things and not sounding self-centered? What do we think?
So I think there's a really fine line in between sounding really self-centered and just showcasing your skills. But I think of scholarships almost like college essays when this is like your time to brag about yourself. Because if you're writing kind of timid because you are too worried about feeling self-centered, then whoever's reading your essay is not gonna really get to know everything you've done So my advice is to write like all of your accomplishments and don't feel like you're being too self-centered, because if you're not, then how would whoever's reviewing your essay know about everything you've done?
That's true. Your application, it's kind of a chance for you to brag on yourself, you know? You've done all the hard work and there's definitely a way to word it, but I think in general, you don't want to say something like, I'm the best leader that there ever was and nobody will compare to me. But, if you have those qualities and you feel confident in them, you should speak on it. I think the best way to find that line is to figure out how you can use the qualities that you believe that you have to speak towards the prompt, to speak towards why you'd be a good candidate. So it's really all about the wording, but you should definitely brag a little bit because you've worked hard and you deserve it. Kendra, do you have anything to add to that?
No, honestly, I agree with Addison and you as well, Alexis. Like, it's a place to brag. And again, of course, there's a way to word it. But there's nothing wrong with that, because if you don't brag it, then how else would they know? So I second both of you.
So true. Tran, anything from you?
I third all of you. I think like yeah, that's like a general thing. I think like the main purpose of like showing like the application, you want to show like the best profile obviously of yourself and try to like highlight why you are the best candidate over others. So definitely highlighting like some awards or some kind of achievements that you had that you think are like significant. Um, I think I kind of think of it as like humble showing off in a sense, because it's like you want to like make sure that you show yourself that you're the best candidate and no one else is in a way.
Yeah, I would say a scholarship application is not the place to be humble. It's the place to really showcase everything that you've done, everything that you've earned, where you are. So go all out. I have one here that says, what are some ways to tackle a scholarship application with a broad standard prompt? So not a super specific one. Addison, do you have anything for that?
It depends on what kind of broad, but for me personally, if I could fit one of my passions into that prompt, I would talk about that. In both of the scholarships that I have won, they were both really broad prompts, but I managed to fit two different passions into the prompt. So I talked about that, and because it was my passion, I was able to really talk into a lot of detail about it. And I feel like details is what's going to make your essay stand out. And it's the finer details as well that's going to make whoever's viewing your essay remember that, like, oh, yes, she was the one who talked about coaching like 100 different kids over one summer. Like, I think just fitting your passion, you have to write about something you're passionate about. Because if you're not, then whoever's viewing your essay is going to know. So something you're passionate about would be my advice.
I would agree. Even the most general prompts, they still want to see your personality shine through. If anything, that's an even more of a reason for you to let your personality shine through. If it's really broad and they're just like, tell me about yourself, like an elevator pitch sort of prompt, um, I think I think you should highlight the parts of you that you would want other people to know. Like what are some qualities that you're proud of, some things you've accomplished that you're proud of? If you had to summarize everything that you feel is important about your character that you would want somebody looking at your application to know about you before they move you to the no pile, what would that be? So it takes some self-reflection and some deliberation, but I think that's a pretty good approach to it. Kendra or Shran, do you guys have anything to add to that?
I guess I could go ahead. I think like obviously with like broad topics, sometimes at least how I view it is that a lot of people might be saying like the same response or something. So again, it's just trying to make it like as memorable as possible. I remember one time there's like this one scholarship where I had like describe yourself, but it was only in 25 like characters. So you had to like really push the limit. And so I don't quite exactly remember what I did, but don't be afraid to go unconventional with it. Is all I'm gonna say. Because sometimes unconventional is like the way to go, because it like shows different side of you and shows your personality.
That's a really great answer too. Sometimes they just want to see what you can come up with. So if, you have a creative side to you, that's a good place to showcase that too. I have another one that says, do you have any advice doing scholarship applications if you don't have leadership skills? I can start that one. I would say advice for applications if you don't have leadership skills would be you have other skills. Even if you're not a natural born leader, everybody has a skill set. So just really hone in on that. If maybe you're not a super outgoing person, you don't really like talking in front of crowds, you're not a leader in that sense, but you're super good at coding, or you're really organized, or you're really good at math, or you're really artistic. You have other qualities other than your leadership qualities that are important for a scholarship application reviewer to know. So really just you have to think about your personality and your academic achievements as a whole, and like what's the broad thing that you would use to describe yourself as, and that's what they want to know. Does anybody else want to touch on that?
Yes. So I think even though, like, if you don't have leadership skills, like Alexis said, you're going to have a different skill set. So you need to cater the scholarship to you as much as possible, because the scholarship is supposed to be about you, and the people who are reviewing your scholarship they're interested to seeing how you're going to make the scholarship about you. And everyone is going to have a different skill set. Not one person's going to have the exact same skill set. So it's important that you have different skill sets than everyone else, because that was going to make you stand out.
Very true. Does anybody else want to touch on that?
I think another thing could also be is like, especially if it's like more of a niche scholarship, say like maybe it's like STEM, or maybe it's like mental health again. There's some skills that, again, like as Addison said, like it doesn't necessarily like have to be leadership related. It could just be skills or some kind of experience that you have that's related to that topic, but that overall shows that you genuinely care about it. And so I think that when I apply for scholarships, I kind of like I try to like think like I'm the person who's reviewing it on my end, or on the other end, and like, oh, like, so how is this student going to like best use the scholarship? Like why are they a good candidate? Like how are they going to use that money? Like is it going to be for good reasons? It's going to be for bad reasons? So kind of like showing like a general or like a genuine interest or a motive, and showing how specifically you use that money sometimes might help. And not necessarily like, even if you're lacking on like leadership, just showing overall your general interest and passion, I think would like shine out.
That's very true. Sometimes it's about the particular program that you're applying for, what kind of skills they're looking for. Leadership never hurts, obviously, but it's not everything. So hone in on the other parts of your personality. Kendra, do you want to add anything else before we move on? Okay, cool.
Honestly, I think you guys are good. So
All right, I've got a couple questions in the chat about expressing emotional experiences in your scholarship application. People feel 50-50 about it. Like, do you express things that happen to you? Are you remain professional? Like, where's the line between giving some anecdotes about like your personal life and then giving anecdotes about your professional life? What do you guys think about that?
I think I can answer that one, because I think you can tell like more emotional experiences, like things in personal stuff in your life, while also sounding professional. Because I did that, and this is what I did in terms of relation to scholarship, because it was asking kind of what was an obstacle in your life. Well, that's also quite a very, like, it's asking for you to be personal, but sometimes it doesn't. And I do talk about, one thing I do talk about was when I moved here in 2018, which is was just with my family and it was a tough time. But I framed it in a way that it was not like I was guilt tripping and not like I was like pouring my heart out with no like with the thought of just for getting sympathy. It was in relation of how that actually helped me become the person I am now. So it was giving more context to who I am instead of sounding like it was guilt tripping. It just by doing that, it showed that I was persistent. And after that, I built connection. And this is also why I want to be, because it was just me and my family, this is why I focus on expanding my community, and that's why I focus on tennis community. So it kind of gives context as to why I do what I do. So that's how I kind of make it not like I'm guilt tripping, because there is a point as to why I tell it in my application. So hopefully that answers the question.
I think that's a great answer. I agree with Kendra. If your story is giving context to where you are now and what you've gone through has created a path for the way that you want to live your life and the things you're passionate about, then it's absolutely acceptable for you to include that in your application. A lot of the time, that's what we're looking for is like your story. We want to know about the person that we're giving money to. Like, what have you been through? How did you get here? What makes you who you are today, and if those experiences play a part in that, then that's important to share, only as much as you're comfortable with, of course. But I think that you are showing a narrative, like I said, back to that narrative point, you're creating an overall story of you as a person, including your personal life and your academics. So you have to find the way to mesh those two things together to paint that picture. Right? Does anybody else want to touch on anything before we wrap up the Q&A? Okay, cool. I can rapid fire through a couple of these smaller ones. How many people typically apply to a single scholarship? We get anywhere between 150 applications to up to over 1,000 for any scholarship. It really just depends on if it's a member only scholarship, because we have some scholarships that are only open to members and we have some that are open to the public. That plays a really big role. The age group that we're looking for, all of those kinds of things, but any given scholarship is going to get hundreds of applications. So that's why it's so important for you to make yourself stand out. What are we able to use our scholarship money for? NSHSS scholarship funds can only be used for college, university purposes. We send the money directly to your university and it's applied to your student account, and that can be used for tuition, room and board, books, anything of that nature. It can't be used, unfortunately, for any kind of academic program that's not school related. Like if you're going on a trip to do research in Guatemala, that's awesome, but we can't give scholarship money for that as of right now, unfortunately. Okay. All right, I think that wraps up the Q&A portion of our webinar. Thank you guys so much for your participation. Everyone did an awesome job. Thank you everyone for attending. I'm going to touch really quickly on the Be More grant before we wrap up here. So our Be More grant is, it's a really special opportunity that NSHS offers to its members from high school to college to lifetime members, our fellows. And essentially it's a live Shark Tank style competition that takes place in Atlanta, where our headquarters are. And it's intended for students who have a nonprofit, an invention, a cutting edge project, some kind of service that is aimed towards world betterment. It can be any wide range of topics, of areas of interest. The top 10 winners receive a $10,000 grant each, and the 5 finalists will receive $1,000 each. So no matter what, if you're chosen as one of the top 15, you're going to walk away with something. It's a really great experience for honing on your presentation skills. The application entails a business plan, all of those kinds of things, proof of product. It's a really special opportunity that not a lot of places offer. So if you have anything remotely related to that, I highly encourage you to scan the QR code and take a look. If you ever have any questions about it, you can always email us and we'll get to you as soon as we can. The deadline for that is September 5th, 2024. So if you haven't started your application yet, I highly encourage you to take a look and get started on that. Think that concludes our webinar for today. Thank you all so much for attending. I hope it was valuable. It was valuable to me. And we hope to see you next time. Thanks, guys.